Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Cinefile, the show where Jake and I break down a movie of the week. We love talking cinema, and we love that you love to listen to us talk about cinema. Today, we are talking about Jaws, very first blockbuster from 1979. Jake, I know you've seen Jaws before. I mean, you are wearing a Jaws shirt. When was the first time you saw Jaws, and what was your impression of it?
When was the first time I saw Jaws? So I didn't see it. Well, I saw part of it when I was very, very small because it's one of my dad's favorite movies. And that may or may not be why I'm afraid of sharks. Um, I've always been terrified of sharks, and like I got over that. Um, but I may or may not have seen the climactic end scene where, spoiler alert, Robert Shaw gets bitten in half. Uh, saw that at a very young and impressionable age, and so yeah, of course, saying spoiler alert for a movie that was came out in 1975, I don't feel like I need to say that, but just in case. um Anyways, the first time I actually saw Jaws all the way through, um I remember it. I went with my dad, and I was in high school, I want to say. Yeah. And they just restored an old theater in my hometown, Goshen, Indiana, and they're doing like free movies throughout the summer to like get people to come in and like check it out and whatnot. And they showed Jaws, and so I actually got to see it on a big screen the first time. The first time I saw it all the way through, and I thought it was great. I mean, obviously, that first viewing through. I mean, it's definitely a thriller for sure. Like it got my heart going at some points. And even, on this rewatch, there are still points that, um, you know, I know exactly what's coming, but it still scares me every time when Richard Dreyfuss's character, um, Hooper, when he's down diving and the head pops out of the hole in the boat. Every time, every time. I'm like, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, son of a gun. It scares me every time. But no, this movie, I'm glad we're doing it. Piggybacking on Discovery Shark Week. Uh, figured
Yes.
figured what more uh perfect occasion for Jaws. But no, I thought it's a very well done movie. I love it. I think this is Steven Spielberg's first big release. I mean, he had done like a couple like smaller films before that, I think, but this is his first big movie. So it's the start of his career. It's got some notable actors in it: Robert Shaw, Richard Dreyfuss, um, Roy Scheider. I don't know how big he was at the time of this. It definitely helped his career, that's for sure.
Oh, for sure.
Because those three, are really kind of are central three in this movie, but it's so well done. And it's like you said, it's the original summer blockbuster.
Yes, I know for me, I I waited a long time to see Jaws for the first time. So for me, it wasn't as much like I'm not scared of sharks.
Okay.
Um, but I will say it is a fascinating film. And I honestly think it's so fascinating because we're going to talk a lot today about blockbuster cinema. And I think it is really interesting that this is the first big blockbuster. And what we mean by blockbuster, what blockbuster means is not the video store, rip.
Rest in
But
peace.
rest in peace. But back in the olden times, when you wanted to go to a movie theater and watch a movie, you had to stand in line to buy a ticket. So when it would go around, when the line would go around the corner, it would bust the block, thus the blockbuster. There are pictures of both, stuff from Jaws, from Star Wars, these massive lines that would stretch for hundreds of yards, if not close to half a mile.
Mm-hmm.
People waiting to get in to see these movies. So Jaws was the very first one of this generation of just massive blockbusters. And the reason I say this generation is because it's a blockbuster then is very different from a blockbuster now. A lot of blockbusters then were original IP. And while this is based on a book, I mean, this really is kind of original IP. But the point I'm trying to make is this came out of nowhere.
Right. And I mean, it premiered summer of 1975, and it's notable for doing so well in the summer because the summer was traditionally the slow time for theaters, right? You didn't have a lot of people going to theaters during the summertime, and so this was kind of it broke the mold. It became a smash success, and everyone wanted to go see it, and it really made studios realize, like, oh, like if it's like a good enough movie, like people will go see it in the summer. So now you see like big summer releases, like we just had with, we had Dial of Destiny. It was at the end of June. We had Mission Impossible. The latest installment was that second week of July.
Yeah, the 12th.
The 12th. The 17th, you had, of course, Barbenheimer.
Barbenheimer.
Maybe the weekend, the box office weekends that saves the theaters. I mean, those two movies made a lot of money, that first weekend, their first weekend. So.
Yes, they did. But yeah, this just kind of brought to light a new idea of putting movies, big movies into theaters and having people come and see them in the summer. And so I just thought it was really interesting because you mentioned this is a thriller. Mm-hmm. This movie is a thriller. This scared a lot of people. But I think there's so many different interesting pieces about this, from the idea that the shark itself mm-hmm. and the idea of sharks as kind of the antagonist, because the shark, which was nicknamed Bruce, one of them was nicknamed Bruce, and that's in Finding Nemo, Tanner C. Pearson's favorite movie.
Tanner loves that movie.
Tanner loves Finding Nemo.
When he was an RA at Ball State, there was one night I stayed up till like 2 a.m. helping him make a Finding Nemo themed billboard. And literally my job was to take this like massive, like 6-yard sheet of brown paper, and he's like, yeah, cut a boat out of that. And I'm like, what do you mean cut a boat? Like we eventually got kind of a boat out of it. It was inventive and a little abstract, shall we say that? But no, that man loves Finding Nemo. So yes, you point out the shark in that in Finding Nemo is named Bruce after this. And the reason they named the shark Bruce for Jaws, they nicknamed it Bruce, is because that was Steven Spielberg's lawyer.
Really? I didn't know this.
You named it after his lawyer.
Interesting. Well, that's, I could see. I mean, this film was mired in production issues from anywhere from Spielberg wanting to quit, to them almost firing Robert Shaw.
Because he was drunk all the time.
Yeah, because dude was plastered 24/7, which works with his character, but he's not a method actor. He's just an alcoholic. There's a distinction there between an alcoholic and a method actor.
That is for sure.
But the boat sank, I think twice. Mm-hmm. This was like the first big film ever to be shot on the ocean. Cameras got wet. The animatronic shark didn't work all the time. Now I believe this is the case, that there are a couple of shots in this movie of a real shark.
Yeah, if you watch the end credits, there's a note in there about like actual shark footage shot by, and I can't remember who it lists. It was some real life hooper, some shark expert that did shark research and dove with sharks. But no, there are some shots in that last, shall we say, fight sequence, when Bruce goes full frenzy and takes down the orca, um, and
Savage.
tries to eat everyone. There are some shots in there that are real sharks.
And I thought that worked to the film's benefit.
Yeah.
But going back to this idea of sharks, one of the things I wrote down, and we all know that Jake gets his one sheet, and I like never write anything down because I never write. Yep, there we go. I never write anything down. But I said the government, like the local government of Amity Island, is low key sharks themselves.
I mean,
Right?
yeah,
They are
kind of.
preying. They are preying. This is this is the lecturer in me coming out, but they are preying on both the citizens of Amity Island and also the guests or vacationers that are coming for this Fourth of July celebration. So it's really interesting parallel because the first part of the movie, you've got Hooper and Roy Schneider's character kind of going after these people in the local government, saying, "Hey, like we need to shut down the beach. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. We nobody can be on. We need to catch the shark." To the second half of the movie, them going up against Bruce, going up against an actual shark. Well, not an actual shark, but
Yeah.
in the context of the film, an actual shark. So it's an interesting kind of parallel because the thing I notice on this rewatch is this there are two very it's like cut up in half.
Yeah.
They're two very different pieces that work together.
Mm-hmm.
They can go together, but it's clear that the first half of this movie is a different kind of movie than the second half. And I think the second half is what really seals the deal as this being one of the all-time great films.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, it's definitely like a different feel, like before and after they leave to go, they go out to sea to catch the shark. It's interesting that the way you point out about like fighting different sharks in each half. I hadn't really like put that together, but you're right. I mean, they are very really the townspeople are just very predatory. And I mean that's uh that's how, you know, small beach towns on the East Coast, and I would say, you know, you can probably say the same for the West Coast, or, you know, even, you know, up kind of where I'm from, you know, there's a lot of lakes around, and so it's like, you know, you always hear about like up back home they call them Lakers, people that come up just for the summer and they have a lake house up there, or like for instance in this movie, people who you know maybe live in somewhere like New York City or somewhere around there, but then come out to Cape Cod, Martha's Vineyard, Amity Island type places for the summer, because, you know, you want to be on the ocean, you want to be at the beach, you want to do all these things. But the people that live in these small towns, that's how they make their living. I mean,
Right.
these shops will make it in the span from Memorial Day to Labor Day, they will make like 3/4 of their year's profits.
Which is wild.
Yeah, and I mean that's they have to make, you know, so much every summer to be able to survive as a
Right.
business, because, you know, like once you know, fall and especially winter comes, like you got your locals coming, some places probably shut down, I would imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing to do.
Yeah,
So
exactly. You know, like it's too cold to go out on the lake.
yeah.
In terms of like smaller lakes, the lake may be frozen over. But yeah, no, and that's actually fun little side fact here. The reason the Los Angeles Lakers are called the Lakers is because the team wasn't originally created in Los Angeles. And the Lakers
Ah,
were up in, I want to say, if I get this wrong, I'm gonna get a lot of shade thrown at me, but I believe it was in Minnesota. I believe it was the Minnesota Lakers. And they then obviously a lot of the teams have kind of
mhm.
switched around and things like that. Um, but that is why. or like the Utah Jazz. It was originally like the New Orleans Jazz because
Does
that
that
actually
make
makes sense.
that makes so much more sense than
Yeah,
you don't
and
think of
it
a bunch of Mormons sitting around being like, "You like jazz?"
yeah, it's because it used to be the Utah Caves, because of all the caves where the Mormons keep all their records.
What?
Did you not know about that?
No.
Yeah, they have like extensive caves with genealogy records.
Well, Mormons are weird, so
Yeah. Um. Anyway, enough about Mormons. Uh.
get out of here, Joseph Smith.
Yeah, this has been Mormon Moment on the Cinefile. Um, but going back to this idea of sharks, yeah, and the two parts of this film, I think this film really excels in that second part where it's just these three guys.
Mhm.
Richard Dreyfuss is definitely a standout in this film, and I was reading about how a lot of his animosity towards Quint is because the actors themselves like hated each other on set
Yeah.
because Robert Shaw like would piss off Richard Dreyfuss so much because he was just a drunk and wouldn't pay attention and was ruining takes and things like that that he just got so frustrated and fed up with them. But you see this kind of progression in the second half where they kind of become more and more. There's like an unfamiliarity at the
Mhm.
beginning, right? These guys don't exactly know each other and they kind of have a bond, but
Yeah.
then they're kind of pulled apart. Um, and then through the collective of getting attacked by Bruce, two of the three come back together again. But I thought the dynamics really heightened the tension
Mhm.
because it wasn't about the shark. It was about like, are these guys going to kill each other before the shark kills them?
Yeah.
And how are they going to do this? And they're fighting so much. Are they going to even be able to catch it? Like you forget, obviously they're going about shark, but like it's that like that conflict between the characters that I think really, you know, like heightens the tension in the movie.
No, I definitely agree. I think the setup in that first half is good, but if the second half was bad, we wouldn't be talking about this movie right now. It wouldn't have been a
Yeah.
smash hit. Um, just because like it all like this whole movie hangs on the fact of like you have to go out and catch the shark, or at least try to. Um, otherwise, like, your characters suck and are wimps. Um, but no, I think that moment really shines because like we have I would say like we have quite a number of characters in the first half of this movie. I mean, you've got the mayor, you've got Brody's wife, you've got all the various people that go out and try to catch the shark and then get peers ripped off and almost die and lose the Sunday roast. Um, swim, Charlie, swim.
I have a text that I sent you. Let me pull it up. Um, yeah, and pardon my French here, folks, but I said Jaws is about a town of complete dumbasses trying to catch a shark in order to save a patriotic beach party.
That is this movie.
Yeah, yeah, that is, and
Uh,
like I said, pardon my French there, but I think it emphasizes the buffoonishness. Wow, I can't believe I just said that word, buffoonishness of
word of the day.
buffoonity of these characters, but they're like all like there are too many people in these boats trying to go out. There's one guy that like throws like a little mini like bomb thing and he throws it
Yeah,
in the water and it blows up. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? You know, it's like
this
it's
isn't
like
World
they
War
got
II. We don't have depth charges to find the
it's the
submarines.
equivalent of duct tape. Like we'll figure it out, right? We're gonna get in the boat and then we'll figure out how to pull it all together, right? Which is exactly what duct tape is what these guys are doing. They're just like, oh,
Oh
I'm a man,
goodness.
so I know how to fish. And so me and all my buddies grab a pack of Coors and let's go get this sucker.
Uh, yeah.
And then for dinner, the roast.
fish that out of the belly, shark's belly. I mean, it's apt, as my shirt says. It says it's not going down to the pods catching bluegills and tommy cods.
Right. Yeah.
Quint obviously says that line, but they act like, you get all these guys that are just like going out in like dinghies and like 9 of them in like a 12-foot boat, and I'm like, this makes no sense. But
Yeah.
to get back to my point, we were introduced to a fair number of characters, and so there's not a ton of like character developments or like really moments for that to happen. And so like I feel like you get the strength of the narrative in that second half, because we're able to get into some character moments and really learn who these 3 men are. Obviously, like the biggest character moment is Robert Shaw's monologue about the USS Indianapolis, and he almost got fired because the first time he
couldn't
did
do
it, he was stone cold drunk, and was slurring through it. And I've heard stories that Spielberg pulled him aside and said, we're gonna come back and we're gonna shoot this again tomorrow. If you're drunk, you're fired. If you show up sober, we'll do it. He showed up sober and did the thing perfectly.
Yeah.
And
the first take.
Yeah, it's a great scene. I would say it's the best scene in the movie.
Well, yeah, and it's got that Steven Spielberg like kind of pan in.
Yeah.
Which you see a lot of the beginnings of a lot of different Spielberg tropes in this movie, but specifically in that scene, just the way it slowly pans in on his on his character when he's giving this monologue. It just adds to the tension there. Because I think it's really funny that we're talking USS Indianapolis right after seeing Oppenheimer.
Yeah, because the Indianapolis brought the bomb.
Yeah.
It's interesting. You brought it up a little bit just there, but this is, like we said, this is Steven Spielberg's first, big theatrical release of the movie he directed. So talk a little bit more about that. I'm interested. There, you can definitely see some, like, I guess you could call them like seeds of like where some trademark Spielberg things that obviously he's grown and developed, yada yada yada, but you can see like the origins of them in this movie. So talk a little more about that, if you will.
Yeah, so especially in the way the camera moves, is something that Spielberg likes to do a lot of tracking shots and panning. There's always a lot of camera movement, but there's a specific scene that I can think of where Roy Schneider's character, or is it Rob Schneider? No, Rob Schneider, not Rob Schneider, Roy Schneider.
Rob Schneider is not in this movie. That would be a very different movie.
Yeah, that'd be a weird Jaws. Roy Schneider's character. It's just the name Roy Schneider sounds weird. Anyway, it's like it zooms in, but it's the lens.
Yeah,
it's like the focus changes. It's
called,
not a rack focus. What's it called?
It's called a Zolly. I know it's a really dumb term, but it's called the Zolly.
Is that zoom dolly?
Yeah, because in this case, it's probably one of the most famous Zollies. Is it dollies in really quick, but then zooms out. So you're changing like your depth of field, and then so it produces, in this case, like it's a shocking and like kind of jarring, like pulling us into Chief Brody's character of him. It's this moment that he first sees the shark. He's been investigating the shark attacks, but this is the first time he has seen the shark, like as it like kind of like comes out of the water and like bites Alex Kittner. Yeah, I couldn't remember the kid's name.
I never knew the kid's name, so it could be Joe Blow for all I know. But I mean, so we've got that going on, but I think also the way the story is structured, obviously this wasn't, because Steven Spielberg isn't necessarily a writer. But I was thinking about this while watching. I was like, okay, why was this so impactful? Even though this movie is a thriller, there's a sense of adventure to be had.
Yeah.
And that is what Spielberg is great at. And I think we see the beginning of his expertise at bringing adventure into his films with Richard Dreyfuss's character,
Hmm.
because he is so excited about sharks. And he has blind spots. All three of these characters have blind spots that the others kind of fill. But he's really excited about going and catching the shark. He's really gung ho about it. Then you got Quint's character, who's kind of just like chilling,
Yeah.
has the experience and not the naivete, but secretly still really wants to catch the shark, because he likes that, but he's seasoned. And then you've got Roy Schneider's character, who's like, yo, I don't want to be here, don't like water. What's a boat? Where's the Dramamine? You know, and so we've got these three different
Yeah.
characters that are three very different kinds of personality
Mhm.
together, but they're embarking on this quest. And I think the decision to film this on location in the ocean, I think really helped that. But just the scope, and I think it's also helped by John Williams' score.
Very much
Um,
so.
yeah, kind of moving to that in relation. You can't talk John Williams without talking Steven Spielberg. They've done almost every single film together. Every one of Spielberg's films, I think, except for four, have been scored by John Williams. Um, and I know Ready Player One was not scored by John Williams. West Side Story wasn't scored by John Williams, obviously. Um, and then there are a couple others sprinkled in there, and their collaboration, I think, is the key to success for both of them.
Mhm.
So if we're talking about Spielberg, his tropes or things to expect, you almost have to expect a John Williams score. When John Williams first played this for Spielberg, and this was their first collaboration, um, it was just the two notes, da 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 da, and I mean, it's so iconic now, but
Mhm.
Spielberg thought he was clowning. He thought it was a joke.
Yeah.
He's like, just two notes, but obviously we hear it on the horns in the brass
Mhm.
section. You hear the da da, and even in you know the bass and the cello. I mean, it just kind of it adds this extra dimension to it.
Mhm.
But the other thing that I always thought was really interesting about the score, and I'm somebody that listens to John Williams scores aside from the movie, is the Jaws suite is not like it doesn't bring a lot of tension.
No.
It's da 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 da
Yeah.
da. And so that obviously isn't thriller inducing, right? That adds a lot of levity, and I think the decision to go with more levity in a story that could have been like, imagine David Fincher taking on this. I mean, it'd be Seven, but it'd be Shark.
Yeah.
Like it could be really gory, or Quentin Tarantino. There could be blood splattered everywhere and feet on screen. Um, but Spielberg decides to approach this from almost like a fun, a lighter place,
Hmm.
which I think is unique. And I think that's why it had such wide appeal. So I think it had wide appeal because it introduced Spielberg's sense of adventure, but I also think it had wide appeal because of the score,
Yeah.
especially in those days in 1975. You didn't have good home theater systems. You weren't able to play movies in at home anyway.
Hmm.
So in order to hear this great soundscape, you'd have to go to the theater.
Right.
So I would be remiss if I didn't mention John Williams' score. Obviously, he won for best score. Um, I think I forget where I was. I watched a clip of Spielberg was really mad that he didn't get a best director
Really.
nomination. Yeah, for this.
Huh.
But I think overall, this was just the perfect storm of the beginning of a collaboration, a very green director, kind of lower budget, that, because I think people, when you're given the reins to a 100, $200 million film, you feel the ability to go above and beyond and increase the scope. But what Spielberg is able to do here, and I think he's able to do in a lot of his films, is increase the scope without increasing the budget.
Right. No, I
Um,
agree. And I've said it on here before. Um, I think it's, in filmmaking, you have to learn how to make a low budget movie before you can move on to making a medium budget movie before you can go on to making, a high budget movie. So I think it's, one, I mean, it makes sense. Steven Spielberg was a director that showed promise, but no one knew at the time that, he was going to be the film icon that he has become. And so like it would, but if you think back in at the time of like, of course they're not going to give him a lot of money. And a lot of the money they did give him was put into the shark. They made, I believe, three to accommodate different filmings. One of them was a whole shark. I mean, like the whole thing fitted out. One of them had like one side. So like if the shark's here, like you split it down the center. And so
okay.
then like you have this side that like looks like the shark, but then inside is like just bare mechanics or whatever. So you can like get in there and work with it a little more. And then they had the reverse for that. Just depending on what shot they needed. But if I've heard Spielberg talk about this and other people that are on the set, they had planned to use the shark a lot more than they
Mm-hmm.
did, but it had so many issues. I mean, one of the first times they took the full shark out in the ocean, it sank to the bottom of the sea floor. And so they were mired in so many issues, and there's still the pressure from the studio to deliver this movie on time and on budget, and they had to shoot around the shark. And so that's where we see so many of the early scenes from the shark's point of view. And I think that this is no groundbreaking thing, but the terror of this movie is the fact that for so much of it you don't see the shark, but it's there.
Right.
It's there because we're seeing from like below we're shooting from below the water, or we're like right at water level. And you also know it's there because we're introduced with the shark theme, the da 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 da. You hear that introduced at the very beginning of the movie, and when you hear that, a shark attack is about to happen, or the shark is near and he's looking to attack. So
Right.
they're able to establish all these things really out of necessity, but I think it makes it a much more successful film, the fact that they had all the trouble with the shark.
Right.
So, but I think,
Yeah. So the shark is there by everything except the fact, like the
mhm,
physical shark being there.
right.
Right. It's almost like in the new Mission Impossible movie, there's a scene where this AI is erasing somebody in real time from a video camera. So in real life, you can see him, but then you put on your AI glasses like Tom Cruise had, and this guy's gone in real time, and it kind of has like a little bit of a pixelated thing, so you kind of know, okay, something's going on, something's a little fishy, but it's that idea of you can't see him, but he's there,
Yeah.
and we see that with the shark. But to kind of finish up on talking about Spielberg, um, his camera direction and his choice of the shots that he uses. Um, I think he is a master at sharing what the character is thinking without saying it.
Mhm.
It's show, don't tell. I think he's one of the best, if
Yeah.
not the best. And there's the idea of the Kuleshov effect, and then I'll shut up about nerd stuff. But the Kuleshov effect is something where back in, I want to say World War II, the it had to have been World War II. Yeah, the Russians didn't have a lot of film stock. So they had a film school that what they would do is take bits and pieces of film from different whatever, if it was a TV show or a short film or something like that, and place them together to see what would happen. And they discovered that if you were to, let's say, have this can, right? Spindrift, sponsor us because this stuff slaps, right? You have this can, and they show a shot of this can, and then they show a shot of a guy looking, and then they show the shot of the can again. You look at it and you say, oh, he's thirsty. Or it's the same shot of the guy, but you put a baby in there, and then a baby again. And it's, oh, he feels like some love for the child kind of idea. And so it's almost like that, but with the movement of the camera.
Mm-hmm.
That zoom pan, or the track shots that he does, or the dolly in, like those all help us as the audience see what the character is seeing,
Mm-hmm.
or feel what the character is feeling without the character saying, I'm sad.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think it's something he does exceptionally well. And, he really makes you feel a part of the movie. You feel like you're a part of the scene, like you're there and like as an observer, which I think is really, really it's a way he draws you into his story so well. And I know for a lot of this, they shot it handheld, especially this stuff on the water. Again, out of necessity because you can't set up a big track dolly on the
That
ocean.
would, oh my gosh, that would be an absolute disaster. That would
Why do
be,
I feel like Michael Bay would try something like that? Like a floating. Think about it, guys. A floating dolly. I hate on Michael
if
Bay a
Michael
lot.
Bay made Jaws, it would be Transformers
That that
Jaws.
ex, that explosion at the end would be a lot bigger if
Yeah.
Michael Bay made Jaws.
The explosion would be so big that the ocean would dry up. It'd be like a reverse parting of the Red Sea. And it just would like be this wall of water, and then it's just dry land for miles. Um, yeah, he needs to freaking tone it down with the pyrotechnics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I think that handheld, you can kind of feel it. They shot it handheld to kind of mitigate the rocking of the waves,
Sure.
right? Because you're not fixed when it's on the shoulder of a person. You're trying to steady the camera, whereas if it was even just say fixed on a tripod that was in a boat, that tripod is constantly moving and there's no stabilization on that, whereas you as the camera operator are like actively trying to stabilize the camera the whole time. But at the same time, like you're literally seeing it from a person's point of view, you know? And so it makes you feel like you're also on that boat with Quint and Hooper and Brody. Like you're on this adventure too with them to try and catch this shark. So this movie is just so interesting, and we could talk about it for days as far as like
we really can.
The just all the like things that this movie like kind of did out of necessity, and like also like kudos to Spielberg for like being able to like work around like complications or limitations. Like I feel like that maybe more than anything is the trait of someone who could be a really really good filmmaker, is being adaptable. So the way he was able to adapt around some of these challenges, but also like able to like give like really powerful story reasons for why these things are happening and turn a hindrance into an advantage. I think that's just a tribute to him and why his career has been so successful. And I think you see the origins of that here.
And why people love movies, these big blockbusters from the 70s and 80s, is because they had to make it up as they went.
Yeah.
And that innovation is seen on screen, and it is rewarded in in each film's place in Hollywood history.
Yeah.
All right, now we are going to do our Rosebud and Thorn. Jake, as always, I'm passing it off to you. Rosebud and Thorn, what are they?
All right. Consult the handy sheet of notes here. Roses. Robert Shaw, his performance as Quint. He
So
may have
so lifelike.
he may
So,
have
so much
been
verisimilitude.
he may have been an alcoholic in real life, but he sure knows how to play one. And I think his performance comes off really good here. It's a great performance.
No,
I
it's a really good
I
performance.
think
It's
it's the
just
best
really funny that like it's basically just him.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's the best performance in the movie. Um, just like
Really?
even yeah, that may be a hot take, but I think it's the best performance in the movie. Even just like it's so iconic. I mean, from like the first introduction of him like dragging his nails on the chalkboard, like it's so uncomfortable, but like he's an uncomfortable character. So like
Yeah.
that introduction, I think, is genius. And just like obviously we talked about his Indianapolis monologue, um, is a really a powerful piece of acting. And I really enjoy that. But then even just like he's always singing or like speaking in rhyme, which is like very like sailorly.
That is true.
Maybe farewell and adieu to you, fair Spanish
Spanish
ladies.
ladies. Yes.
It's
Farewell and adieu.
that honestly,
Like you've never
that's
met a Spanish lady.
right. But that scene when he's talking to Hooper as he's bringing like the shark cage on, it it kind of gives you chills for a little bit. At least it does me. The way he's not just like, you know, because Hooper's approaching this of like you said, he's excited. Like he's like, oh, I get to like get up close and personal with a shark. And Quint's, you know, the wise kind of experienced salty sailor that's like, I'm not sure I want to get in the water with this shark.
Right.
So and being able to convey that by singing an old sailor song and then laughing maniacally at the end, um, is a brilliant piece of acting. And so I think he, like I said, I think he's the best performance in this.
Oh yeah.
I think Roy Schneider, he's really good in this. I think he's able to like balance between Quint and Hooper really well. But also be like a third voice. You know what I mean? Because Brody is the naive character here, right? He doesn't, you know, his wife's a local, but he's not from the island. He doesn't like being on the water. He doesn't know anything about sharks, and so he's our point of access for this movie, and so we're learning things kind of along with him, and so our own naivety is paired then in between these two book smart and street smart characters, and you kind of feel a kinship with him of trying to like decipher like, okay, what is right here, what the scientist is telling me or what the sailor is telling me, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think he's able to like be that balance between the two, because he knows these are the two men that he needs to save the people on this island from this shark,
Right.
but he needs to balance their competing personalities at times, and so I think he gives a really good performance. I think the score is really good here, and really not just, you know, obviously like the da, 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 it's iconic and so well known, and like yes, that's good, but really, like you pointed out, the like sense of adventure the rest of the score brings. Also, when you talked about the Jaws suite, I definitely know you're talking about the specific track on the John Williams conducting the Philharmonic Orchestra, the album that I introduced you to, because it's a brilliant album.
It's so good.
I mean,
it's so good.
The Vienna Phil is like the best orchestra, one of the best orchestras in the world, and then you have John Williams conducting his own music for them. Like, it's brilliant. But like, I've had that listen to that Jaws suite on that album before, and like, you don't hear the like shark theme at all in that.
No,
but like it's a really good piece of music, and it really kind of sums up the lighter parts of this movie and is able to balance Balance the
Yeah.
heaviness and the terror really
And
well.
that's a
So,
decision that not every composer would have made, or
and
every director would have made.
I think that's it was the less popular decision, if you will.
Mm.
Like it would have been really easy to be like, okay, this is a full horror movie. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like we're going full creature feature here. And that's not what this is in its truest sense. What else? And then the lack of the shark, I think, just is a um brilliant part of this movie, and the way they're able to make us feel the shark without seeing it, because it's been said a million times, but your imagination is 10 times scarier than what real life could be. You know.
Amen to that. Every day. Everybody's always talking about me. I see you in the corner. I see you and your friend in the corner. You're talking about me.
Easy, Tiger. We'll get it.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that later. Um. All right, now my bud. I have one bud. I don't have thorns. This movie's
Okay.
too good. There's
It's
just
S
thorns.
tier. Sigma tier. Yeah.
I do have one thorn, and I think you're gonna think this is a hot take, and I feel like you're gonna disagree with me. But I think Richard Dreyfuss is a thorn.
What the heck is wrong with you?
I think he overacts in some scenes.
We'll discuss.
Specifically, I really like him in most of this movie, but there are some scenes, biggest of which comes to mind is when they're doing the girl's autopsy, or they're looking at the girl's body in the medical examiner's office,
Oh yeah. In
and
the milk.
he's just like, he's like this really breathy and like heavy, and this was no boating accident. And it's just, I don't know, I'm like, chill out a little bit. Like it's too much. It's not earned. Put it that way. It's not earned. The
Okay.
big performance isn't earned. Um, and I feel like you can make the argument that his character has a quick temper, but I think also, I guess I would attribute it more as he's some of his emotions, especially like getting mad, are a little too big sometimes.
Okay.
So, I think he's really good in a lot of this movie. Like I said, I don't mean to discount and say like, oh, he's just kind of meh. He's good, but there are times that I was just like, I've had enough of you. So maybe we'll call it a Bud Plus, if you will.
Bud Plus, available now at Menards. Don't forget that 11% rebate.
Can Menards sponsor us too?
Can you imagine?
We're
Spindrift and Menards, like what?
Folks, we're just looking for any sponsor right now. Really,
Honestly,
we are.
honestly. Okay, first we'll talk about Richard Dreyfuss because he is a rose for me. I think especially the second half of the movie, his performance is great. I see what you mean by overacting, but I think it works. In my eyes, so I can see where it's a bud or a thorn, because there's kind of a lack of verisimilitude there. But for some reason, I feel it just kind of works. I guess we have the fantastic element of the fact that we have a man-eating shark that's like literally, I mean, well, because what did I hear? Humans are like 2200, 22,000% more like we can smell rain more than like a shark can smell blood in the water.
Really?
But yeah, some stupid number that I was like, that can't be right. But then I was like, oh yeah, I can smell rain.
Yeah.
Like it's like, it's coming, it's coming. Tut tut, it looks like rain. Christopher Robin. Um, man, Jake, you're gonna have so much to edit.
You think that's getting cut out? No, that's staying in.
Um, but I think in that fantastic sense, for some reason, it just worked for me.
Okay.
I enjoyed watching him overact a little bit.
Okay.
But in a sense of verisimilitude or realism, I can see where that's a bud. But for me, I also thoroughly enjoyed him getting mad at Quint all the time.
Because you would have gotten mad
Um,
at Quint all the time.
yeah, I really would have. I really would have. There are a couple of people at work where it's like they're not drunk at work, but you're like I need you to focus up, you know. Um, I'm gonna have to give another rose to Steven Spielberg. He is the GOAT in my opinion. I know we disagree on that. Um, but this is a really neat first foray into kind of blockbuster filmmaking. I just love to see his tropes on display. And it's really cool the way they approached a topic like this. Um, and then John Williams' score. It's unique. It's iconic. But like I said, I mean, it just really adds to that sense of adventure.
Yeah.
Bud Thorn, we'll call it a Bud minus. The shark itself, it took me out of the movie. And keep in mind, this was an animatronic shark made in 1975. But there are a couple of scenes where I'm like, that is a really fake shark. Now, do I think they should George Lucas it and make it like a real CGI shark? No. But because that's part of the charm, but nevertheless, it does take me out of the film just a little bit. But other than that, I really don't have any thorns other than the idiot drunk guy at the very beginning. He's like who's like kept looking at this girl. He had like it was like a coffee cup, but it had to have been filled with alcohol. And he was like, he kept looking at her, and she goes, "Okay, let's go swimming." And then my guy can't even make it to the ocean. He had to lay down and take a nap on the beach. He goes, "Come on, I'll get there. I'll get there." And then he's, "Nah, you ain't getting there, fam." So I just thought that was just very worthy of a thorn. But I digress, which has basically been this whole podcast today. Jake, who do you think I am? It's that time in the pod. Who do you think I am?
So forget everything I just said about Richard Dreyfuss being a Bud or a Bud plus, because I think you're Hooper. He's a very academic character, and we all know that you are a very academic person, Mr. Master's degree over there. But like even just like more than just like, oh, he's smart, but like he uses his academic background all the time. Like that's who he is. He operates in that academic, like scientific kind of like problem solving way of like, you know, he sees things very much one way, and I think you see things through a very academic lens a lot of the times. He's also funny. I enjoy his humor, and I know you would enjoy his humor. And so you would be the one that would show up with 2 bottles of wine because you didn't know what I was serving, and then would kind of get flustered when I pour a whole glass.
No, I would honestly, I wouldn't get flustered with that. But not saying you're an alcoholic, but wine is great. So I'm not really flustered. Why? I'm not really. Good wine is great. Some wine is garbage. I've learned that. I thought I didn't like wine, and then I realized I just have never had good wine. As for me, I appreciate that because even, I mean, look how I approached watching this movie again. I just that whole thing about the two halves and the parallelism, like all of that, just kind of, I only have like this part of it doesn't. This isn't notes on Jaws. This isn't notes on Jaws. It's literally this.
Okay,
It's
Wes
it's
Gehring.
3 lines. It's 3 lines. Um, and that formed the basis of our whole discussion. Uh, I think you are Quint, and I know this does not surprise me, partially because you have a shirt. But
I influenced the decision. I fully
as
did.
we've said before, you are a fan of Civil War songs,
Mm-hmm.
and this guy sings, fare thee well, Spanish ladies, whatever the heck, all the single Spanish ladies. He sings that like all the time, all the
All the
time.
single Spanish ladies. Is that the Beyonce
All
remix?
the single Spanish ladies. Now put your gold doubloons up. Yeah, whatever. Um,
Oh God,
but
we have gone off the rails.
I know this is this is actually really fun. Um, but you love singing that, especially when you've had a drink or two. Those have come out before, and so it just reminded me of that. And I will never not mention that when it comes to Quint's care. I mean, it's just that's just, you're not an alcoholic, and you're not a seafarer, but I that is definitely something that resonated. I was like, yeah, that's Jake for sure. Okay, we got some final thoughts on this off the rails podcast. Jake, I'm going to pass it over to you. What are your final thoughts on Jaws?
Final thoughts. This is a really good movie. It's a really good introduction to Steven Spielberg. Steven Spielbergers. What the heck am I saying? Folks, I need to sleep. That's apparent.
I do too.
Steven Spielberg's filmography. If you're a fan of Spielberg, I think you need to watch this just to see where he got his start. And you just see, it's neat to see how he's grown that filmmaking style throughout his filmography. But this is really well made. It's got some good performances in it. It's it's nothing too deep, except the ocean. That's pretty deep. But it's thrilling. And like I said, for me at least, there's still some scares, some startling moments, even after you've seen it, 20, 30 times. So it's definitely got a good rewatch factor, at least in my book. So I'd encourage people to see it again, and enjoy your summer movies.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of in a similar vein. My final thoughts, this is a great film. I kind of went into this viewing thinking, okay, why was this the first blockbuster? And just how unique it was for the time. I think that uniqueness is what kind of propelled its box office. It's full of great performances. The first half is a little sluggish compared to the second, but if you watch it from start to finish, you will understand why this movie became a phenomenon.
Yeah.
So it's a great time at the theater, I'm sure. If you ever have the opportunity to see it on the big screen, I would highly recommend that. But overall, great film. But the question is for you folks, what did you think of Jaws? Had you seen it before? Let us know your review, your comments, all you single Spanish ladies with the gold doubloons up in the air or whatever I sang earlier. Let us know your thoughts down below. If you like this video, hit that like button and hit that subscribe button, ringing that bell to get all notifications on upcoming content. Next week, we are talking Rear Window, one of my favorite and Jake's favorite Hitchcock films. Make sure to follow us on social media. We are now on Threads. I cannot, like last year, that sentence would not make any sense. But now it does. We are on Threads. We've been posting some thoughts on Barbenheimer. Jake has seen both. I've only seen Oppenheimer because I've been very busy serving in Barbie. But we love to hear from you there. Make sure you can comment on our threads. You can comment on Instagram what you thought of Barbenheimer, either of the films or both. We'd love to hear that. But make sure to tune in next week for Rear Window. Until then, for Jake Biller, I'm Ben Sparrow. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you back here next week. And cut.